All right, guys, she is the Senior Director of Digital Partnerships at Capitol Records. Lindsay Williams joins us. Lindsay, thanks so much for the time.
Hey, no, I'm so excited to be joining. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I always kick things off with a random question. I know you have you're a proud owner of a golden doodle. So,
oh my gosh, yes.
The best dog movie of all time is?
Oh my gosh, okay, no question. I think it's Homeward Bound.
That's a good movie.
It's so funny. We have an open floor plan now. So we have like a TV and sometimes movies will be on. And the other day we all freaked out because Homeward Bound was on, and it brings me like right back to being like 12 years old. But yeah, I would have to say Homeward Bound for sure.
Did you ever watch Wishbone as a kid? Do you remember that TV show?
Oh my gosh, wait, what channel was it on? It sounds really familiar.
It was either Disney or Nickelodeon, but
yes.
It was like a terrier that went through history and I don't know.
Yes, that's right. Oh my gosh, that's
really
so
good show. Awesome. So I want to get into your story a little bit because you spent quite a bit of time at the Grammys before going to Capitol Records. So tell me about your story a little bit and what's led you to where you're at today.
Yeah, definitely. So I always wanted to be in the music business. I was a huge fan of pop music and boy bands. And one day in high school, I was like, I'm going to be in the music industry. And I had no idea exactly how to get there. And my senior year of college, I interned at Universal Music Group Distribution. And I interned in the digital marketing department. And at the time, I obviously being a product of this generation where I was on the message boards and I was online and AOL and AIM, obviously I was savvy, but I wasn't.
I miss AIM. AIM was a great tool.
Oh my gosh. I know. RIP.
Yeah.
But I wasn't aware of digital marketing as a job that I could get into. So as I learned a lot in the internship, I literally was there right when social was taking off.
Well, and what year was this?
So this was 2008. So 2008.
A digital marketing role in 2008. I mean, that's cutting edge.
Yes, no, definitely. Angela Sanchez, who was the head of the department at the time, she had created this internal digital marketing team under Universal Distribution. And it was an amazing internship program. So literally there's about 20 to 30 interns a semester where we were like on the message boards talking about albums that were coming out, pretending to be other people, awesome. doing the, organic marketing. And social was just starting to take off and I had just graduated. So it was the days where we were still like on MySpace, like doing MySpace pages for artists, but Facebook hadn't yet crossed over into being a platform for marketers and for artists.
Pages and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
And Twitter was just bubbling up. And then literally it was right at that peak when they were like, okay, we need someone to oversee social. They're like, Lindsay, you should do it. And I was like, oh, wow. Because it was a brand new position. And at this time, not even my bosses, no one knew exactly what that was.
It's so funny you say that because so many people have joined me on this show and that's exactly their story too. Like, hey, I think Lindsay knows social. Can you just run it? And that's really spawned a whole new industry of professionals, which is awesome.
Oh, definitely. And so when I stepped into that role, it was a community manager role, which again was which was like a newer title at the time. And so really what I was tasked with, because I was at Universal Music Group Distribution, which is basically the umbrella of labels, Capitol, Interscope, Def Jam, Republic. I worked with all of the labels to help. Like one of the things I remember having to do is when Facebook rolled out URLs. I was like helping consolidate like Nicki Minaj's 20 Facebook pages to try to, because I don't know if you remember that time when there was like so many rogue pages and no one knew what the official one was versus that one. So it was like during that time.
How many people, a lot of people learn coding with their MySpace profile.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think that everybody of my generation has a little bit of HTML knowledge.
Well, how much, if you helped run those pages, how much drama was it for like Nicki Minaj's top 8 as well?
I know, right? Well, at the time I wasn't helping run the pages. Thankfully, I was helping, since I was sending centrally at Universal, I was kind of helping just with some of the logistics of making sure that those pages were like optimized and good to go. So thankfully I didn't have to worry about the top 8 for her at the time. And then when I was there for a couple of years, I was ready for a new challenge. And funny enough, I ended up meeting my boss at the Recording Academy or the Grammy Awards on Twitter. We met on Twitter and just like had built a relationship naturally through random moments on Twitter because we were both obsessed with the platform. And then an opportunity came up to head over there, and I was so impressed. Her name is Beverly Jackson, and she just really, really is such an innovator and thought leader in that space. And she really pushed me to think differently when it came to digital marketing. And at the Recording Academy, I had the opportunity, obviously everybody knows the Grammy Awards. And I was so proud to be able to work on the Grammys, because for at least 4 of the 6 years that I was there, we were the top social television event, just under the Super Bowl. So meaning more people talked about the Grammy Awards on social, online, than any other television event. And outside of that, though, I really got to explore doing things like working on Music Cares, which is under the Recording Academy, which is a nonprofit, working with Grammy Advocacy, which, focuses on policies for musicians and songwriters, and working with the Grammy Museum. So outside of this huge, giant entertainment moment, I was also able to really tap into all these other industries, basically like nonprofit and politics and things like that. And then I was there for about 6 years, and about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I came over to Capitol as a director of digital marketing. I was ready to kind of expand my skill set and to continue to grow in this space. And yeah, which led me to where I am now, which I am going to be the senior director of digital partnerships, which just happened within the past month. So I'm really excited to kind of continue to build those relationships with our partners.
Congratulations. I think we're good luck. I think a lot of people recently get promotions before they come on the podcast.
Oh, really?
Too. I don't know
so
what that is.
You're like the whisperer, like, exactly. The digital marketing whisperer.
Why don't we book you on the podcast? It's good things happen. Well, I want to dig in actually to the Grammys and Capitol Records as well. But first, I don't know if you're geeking out as much as I am about IGTV and it being in stream now.
Yes.
Because I think with you guys too, I just thought, music videos alone, there's a huge opportunity maybe on that. But my personal opinion was, I think Instagram originally tried to make a product that would go head to head with YouTube and kind of be a standalone product like WhatsApp, like Messenger potentially. And it always just was an amazing feature on top of Instagram. And now that they finally, I guess, caved a little bit and say, what, let's put it where our money is and let's put it in stream. I'm super excited for this and want to get your thoughts on it as well.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad you brought this up, because I remember when IGTV was first announced, I was like, this is huge.
I know.
I was like, this is going to be massive. This is now the first step into, okay, great. We're all cool with vertical video. Yes, we're becoming more integrated with stories across platforms, but this is the first time that there's gonna be long form video in vertical form. And then it launched. And I remember we got some artists on board and it was exciting, and then people didn't really watch it. And then all of a sudden you start getting this negative narrative from people being like, oh, this sucks, or this isn't that great. However, I always knew it was going to take a little bit of time before, Instagram and also users figured out, because it's not a natural thing. Every time there's a new product, people aren't going to be, oh yeah, I'm going to change my user behavior and all of a sudden start
and it was just
a
messy rollout in terms of, you just didn't know when new content was uploaded. There's like this little weird logo in your top right of your screen. There's also a different app. Which one do I go to? So it just kind of, it was clunky.
Definitely.
On the start,
And now the seamless integration, it's like, it's so easy. You're watching and then you're like, oh yeah, I do want to watch more. So then you instantly tap and you get to watch the complete. So I think it really does change the game. And I think from the music industry perspective, always our challenges are making sure that we have deals in place, and because of the fact that we need to be monetizing our content, because we need to protect our creators, which is our songwriters and artists. And so I think what happens is there's always new features that are launched, and then it takes us a second to figure out what the best way is for us to utilize the platform. But in the meantime, from the digital marketing perspective, we can't wait for certain things. So we make sure that there's other content on there, like, fun episodic content or Q&A or interviews, BTS content, things like that we can make sure fans are still engaged.
Well, I'm kind of bummed because we recently just wrapped the SAG Awards, and that was before IGTV made this change. But I think what I would do, and I would love to hear from you from a Grammy standpoint, would you upload full acceptance speeches and just say continue, if it's longer than a minute type deal, just continue watching type deal.
Absolutely. And 100%. That's the content that people want to see. And that's why it was so funny being at the Grammys for as long as I was. I always joke that my first Grammys, which was 2012, Man, those were simpler times. I always joke. I
Yeah.
was like, they
Well,
were,
weren't you like a one woman band too, in a sense? Like,
yes,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, for a
Before we even
minute.
met, I remember looking from afar, and it seemed like you were just like doing it all type deal. So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So it was, I mean, obviously for the day of show, like we had like a few people there, but like up until then it was just like literally myself and my
Lindsay, figure
boss
it
at the
out.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And oh my gosh, simpler times in 2012. Text tweets, maybe a
I
few
know.
photos on Facebook, and then fast forward to my last Grammys, which was Snapchat, Instagram Live, Instagram Video, Instagram Stories, Facebook Video, Facebook Live, Facebook 360,
Yep,
Snapchat story. I mean, it was just it's incredible to see how many things are coming out now.
yep.
And so to your question about like how would you integrate Instagram stories, it's finding that cadence of, okay, what is the content that fans want to are most interested in? When do we put this content in front of them? We do want them to tune into the show itself, but as we know so many times now, people are just tuning in for the greatest moment. So it's finding the best ways to utilize all those various features, like when do we do the Instagram live versus the Instagram TV videos.
Yeah, and I think the 1 minute limit has been limiting in
Hmm.
some factor because Instagram is still by far the most organic play in
Right.
social right now. I mean, sometimes 100 times more organic engagement than Facebook or Twitter.
Right.
So now that you can upload like an award show speech or a music video or
Hmm.
behind the scenes, just yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it's gonna definitely be interesting. So
Hmm.
going back to the Grammys for a little bit, what was your favorite part about working with the Grammys?
Oh my goodness. I think there were so many different aspects. I think that especially when you look at how the Grammy Awards changes someone's life. I think that's
Yeah,
something just from like, an emotional level. It was always incredible to see. Obviously, what you see on the award show, there's actually 80 categories, only 8 are given out on air, which is unbelievable.
hmm
Um, I mean, for me, it was more about seeing the artists that were from genre, like from the world music genre or from jazz, and seeing how that really changed their life. So that was more on an emotional level. But I think two things in particular I really love. Number one was the show itself. I always joke that we were air traffic control. We always had to
100, yeah,
find
100%, yeah.
yeah, we had to find the best ways to communicate. So the thing is, as we know about social, whether you're as a brand, whether you're participating in the conversation or not, it's happening. And so I know that whether we did nothing, people are going to still talk about the show, but I took a lot of pride in finding the best ways to put gas on the fire
Yeah.
and finding the best ways to create content and create experiences across platforms that fans were going to get really excited about. And then the other thing that I actually really enjoyed, and I think it was because it was a challenge, was working on Grammy advocacy, which was all about advocating for musicians' rights on Capitol Hill. That's a whole different industry that I had to like get in tune with. So yes, it's music, but how do
Yeah.
you then create messaging about policies and how do we get our community engaged, our members of the Recording Academy engaged in that space? And I was able to go to our Grammys on the Hill event or their Grammys on the Hill event 2 years in a row in DC and to walk the halls of the Capitol and hear musicians talking about why these policies are going to impact their lives as songwriters. Not just the big superstars. It's not just about them getting more money, but about these songwriters who are and these working musicians. I think that was something that I really enjoyed doing because also it was a challenge of finding that way to then connect on a digital
Yep.
perspective.
What is an underrated skill needed to be successful in the crazy award show space?
Oh man, I mean, I know that you guys have worked on a lot of award
Yeah.
shows, so I'm sure you can attest to it as well. I think that the award show space from a perspective of you got to know, especially in digital marketing, you're going to get the negative feedback.
Yeah.
Every year,
Hmm.
every single year, you're going to get the negative feedback. But I think the thing that you need is you need to be nimble, especially because it's live. I mean, I
Yeah.
always felt like it was the big game. I would get so nervous. And I was like, even though we had like everything in place, but you have to be ready to pivot whether it's the conversation that's going on, whether it's all of a sudden a moment you need to make a quick decision and go with it.
Yep.
Like the Pharrell hat moment at the Grammys, it was like, I mean, that was a huge moment.
Yeah.
So you have to be nimble enough and confident enough to make those decisions in real time, because of the fact that you literally don't have any time to think, and you got to just be ready to go. So I think that's like probably one of the biggest things, because of the fact that it moves so quickly, and then literally it's over in a night. And you're on to the next.
Yeah.
You gotta be ready to capitalize.
I totally agree. I think what's funny, and I said this on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, but like 4 years ago when we worked the SAG Awards, we had like 6 people on the ground.
Yep.
And then this year we had like 27 different people involved with like red carpet activations and different people running all the different platforms. And it's really turning into the equivalent of the TV production, because
absolutely.
You have to have somebody running IG stories, and that's all they do. That's their number one job.
Yep.
Somebody uploading all the acceptance speeches and moments to Facebook Watch, somebody focusing on community management. All of a sudden, this social media strategy is taking a village to run, which is it's so crazy to see that.
Yeah. And again, like when I first started, it was maybe like 4 of us running for my first show. By my last show, when I was overseeing everything, I mean, there was probably 20 people. And same thing, I had one person focusing on, Instagram newsfeed, one person focusing on Instagram stories, one person focusing on Snapchat, because it does need that dedicated focus. Whereas before we could probably multitask.
And by the way, I walked away thinking that we could have done 60% more, like if
100%.
If budget was there, I would have had probably 40 people, 2 people on each platform, and we could have hit every moment type deal. So
absolutely.
Is there one thing that surprises you now that you've kind of took a step away from the award show space and award season? Anything that surprises you that award shows don't pay enough attention to or don't plan enough when it comes to their social strategy?
Yeah, I think one thing that we always tried to do, and I think we could have always done better, was my boss at the time was really great about making sure that we were included in even looking at script developments from the show. So being able to integrate and know when those moments were coming. I think sometimes I think social can be more of a reaction, even those who are working at the award show. And I think that and that's also just a product of the fact that production versus the show are kind of like two, there's different teams working on various things. But she was always really great about making sure we were integrated. So we made sure to create content, whether it was quote cards. So literally as that quote was happening, we were going with it rather than it maybe happening 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes later. Yeah. And so that is something that I think can continue to happen more. And that's something that actually not just award shows, but in the digital space, I'm trying to focus on more, is how to create that seamless interaction between like offline and online, where it feels like it's all coordinated and there's, and it's a great user experience just overall.
Yeah, it feels like, you cannot have a marketing meeting without social being present, and can't have a social meeting without marketing. And now, especially with production as well, how are you expected to be on the offense rather than the defense if you want to cover an event? And you have a connection with the production team? That's a pretty important piece of the puzzle.
Oh my gosh, most definitely. Right? And I think you even look at it when you look back at the big Oscar Twitter moment, the selfie moment with Ellen, and that was a true integration with the Twitter team, with working with the host. And sometimes those moments don't always get to happen, because all those elements have to come together naturally. But I think that when it does, it creates a lot more great content.
And like we always talk about like the Golden Globes Oprah moment a couple of years ago. And the reason that took off, to your point, is there's 25 people in a room from Dick Clark Productions, and the second that happens, they get it up on social on every platform and they boost it with paid media, and it starts to take off, and Twitter helps it get into a moment, and all these things are, again, it's not just that stuff doesn't just kind of happen randomly. There's a lot of thought that it gets put into
Yes, exactly. And I think that's where my philosophy always was with the Grammys. Like, the moments are going to happen, the conversation's going to happen, but it's how do you put gas on the fire, and at what moment do you put gas on the fire, and what are the moments that you do focus on?
Love it. All right, so let's get into Capitol Records. Would love to get your overall thoughts, because since you've been in the music industry on the Grammy side, Capitol Records side.
Mm-hmm.
Just, with streaming in play now and Spotify and Pandora and these things, kind of the technology increasing, how has that changed? I mean, obviously it's changed the industry in such a huge way.
Yeah.
But what are some, I guess, the pros and cons that the industry's had to deal with this new technology?
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's so interesting. Ever since I started in the music industry, like now at 10, 11 years ago, there was always this sense of change that was happening. Like ever since then, it kind of hasn't stopped because of the fact that obviously going back to the Napster days, ever since then, the industry has just been trying to figure out where do we land, where do we focus.
Yeah.
And I think now within the past couple of years, the music industry is really finding its sweet spot. So I think at times people, the narrative used to be like, oh my gosh, the music industry has just changed so much. And it was more of a negative kind of like viewpoint. I think it's more exciting than ever in the music industry because of these changes that are happening with streaming and with the way that artists can connect in an instant way, and how really there isn't a real blueprint anymore in terms of how to break an artist or how to grow an artist. And so it's been great to see how the music industry is starting to find its footing a bit of our place within tech and in music, because I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is that I think for a minute the music industry was kind of chasing tech because tech was innovating our space, and they were like, wait a minute, but that's ours.
Yeah.
So then we had to try to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to land? Where are we going to sit in this space now? So it's been exciting. I really do feel the past 2-3 years, especially, there's a lot of momentum and there's a lot of growth in the streaming space, because I think it also took a minute for streaming to hit the masses, for people to really, like, oh yeah, I'll pay my $10 just like I pay my, $10-12 for Netflix. I'll do the same thing for Spotify.
Yeah. I think when it first came out, I think there was even lawsuits and a bunch of stuff in Congress and things like that.
Yeah.
It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, in 2019, even the old school folks understand that we're not buying CDs anymore, at Sony Music type deal. Like it's, everybody kind of understands with Pandora and streaming and 5G coming out soon, that this is where it is. So let's figure it out.
Definitely. Yeah. And what's been interesting too, just from the physical space, and you'll internally with the industry as well, there's been a lot of traditional physical focused positions and titles that you can see have been changed now to focus more on streaming and things like that. However, the physical space is totally not dead, which is still, I think, would be surprising to especially a lot of people in tech. But what has been the most surprising is the rise of vinyl. And I think that goes back to the fact that fans, especially super fans specifically, still want something physical. And like, I feel like there will always be elements of having some type of physical product, but it's just not going to be nearly to the mass that it used to be. And it's not going to be, as wide stream as it was.
So I guess how has that changed, like the percentage? Because before Nicki Minaj, 2008, the number one goal internally at Capitol Records is like, let's get this CD printed, let's get it in Target, let's get it all these different things. And now if you broke a Cardi B's new album or what have you, like in 2019, 2020, where do you, like, how has that changed? And what's the first step of the ROI or KPI with different artists?
Definitely. Obviously, a lot of the focus is on streaming, but also it's looking at all the different elements that come together. So especially now when you look at the Billboard charts, it's not strictly by
sales,
right? It's by consumption. And then it's like, if a song reaches a certain threshold, then that's also considered an album. So there's all of these elements. It's almost like a formula that goes into what then is attributed to the charts, which we still look at. So pretty soon YouTube video views are now going to be going towards the charts, which is going to be massive, especially for artists who get those massive amounts of views.
Well, and I think people underrate YouTube. Like that may be the number one place where people listen to music.
Oh, honestly, that absolutely is. Especially when you have territories that maybe don't have access to Spotify, or some of these streaming services haven't infiltrated there yet. YouTube is still so huge. And so I think when approaching a project, you have to look at the project across the board. So not just focusing strictly on Spotify, Pandora, but okay, great, what's our play on every single platform on YouTube? But then also, you know, how do we take a song to radio? Like there's different formulas and the different things we need to do when we're taking a song to radio, because radio is a little bit slower than streaming. And so finding the ways that those two work together. So it definitely is project by project, depending on what the goals of that we have for each of our artists.
Walk me through Vivo for a second, because I've noticed in the last couple of years, I haven't really looked into it, but that's your game for sure. It used to be where it just wasn't. It just seems like it's all like one big like package now. Where before it seemed like the record labels were kind of scattered, and some were cool with it, some were not. Yep. So what's changed with Vivo on YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, really, Vivo, you know, years ago. I mean, I want to say like about 10 years ago, 9 years ago, Vivo was the first one to identify that the premium music video content on platforms was all over the place. And so Vivo was really one of like the original MCNs when you think about it. And so Vivo being able to identify that kind of gap in the industry, the labels were able to come to the table and partner with them on making sure that the premium content was being delivered so fans could experience it in a you know, a better way. And I think to your point, there was like one or two labels that weren't on board. And I think now identifying that it was the best place for all labels to kind of be involved now. But most recently, as of last year, Vivo did away with their actual website. And so Vivo focuses specifically on YouTube now and how to optimize our videos and make sure that our videos are not only delivered, but identifying all the things that we need to do to make sure that, you know, as YouTube changes, as the algorithm changes, how can we shift how we market and how we distribute content?
Is that like an equal revenue share amongst almost all the major record labels, or I mean, that figures like, it just feels like that would be a huge mess that it seems like it's worked out in some fashion.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I probably would not be able to speak to the actual specs of the actual agreement, but yeah, each label, I mean, I think they each have their own deals that they've been able to come to that they're comfortable with.
And then when it comes to different artists, is it really artist to artist? Because you see like obviously Jay-Z and Tidal and things like that, but when you guys work with your artists, if you're on Spotify or Pandora, or you're, you know, even on Sirius XM or Vivo, is each artist different in what platform they choose to be on? Or if you're in the Capitol family, we're going to Spotify no matter what type deal?
No, that's a really great question. I think it definitely is from project to project. And I think it also, when you look at the genre of music and what genre is performing, obviously Spotify and Apple Music are going to be the two big players, but then it's also making sure, again, I think that it's super important to be making sure that you're engaged and visible across platforms. And that's also how I approach, even with digital partnerships. I think everybody, especially right now, is like Instagram, which 100% Instagram is super important, but you can't forget to create moments and be engaged on all of the other platforms. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to streaming, is you can't just too much focus on one platform. You got to make sure that you have a presence across.
Absolutely. So being in the partnership game, what's one of your favorite, I guess, partnership campaigns or branded campaigns that you've worked on?
That's a great question. I have a lot of things that I want to accomplish this year. One of the things that I was super proud of, and actually we worked on Mamma Mia together, but last year I worked on an Amazon Alexa skill for Mamma Mia. And that was really exciting because of the fact that voice is so important moving forward. And I think what I learned from that, well, number one, I was just excited because of the fact that there's already a huge fan base of Mamma Mia fans from the first film. So to create some kind of fun game and experience for fans to be able to engage with was exciting. So it was a Mamma Mia finish the lyric awesome skill. And I'm excited to see as voice develops, how it finally kind of breaks through to mainstream and how it becomes something that we're just all using more consistently. And I know that that's going to be something that's going to be huge for music. And so that was something recently that I worked on that I was really excited about, but know that like in a couple years time, it's going to be something that's going to be just the norm.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, you mentioned Mamma Mia, so we've worked together on a couple like influencer campaigns. What's your approach on influencers, how to use them the right way, and kind of what has been most successful for you guys?
Yeah, definitely. Everybody that I work with internally knows that I have a love-hate relationship with the word influencer.
I think everybody does, yeah.
I think honestly, it's just because it's such a loaded word and everybody has a different perspective on what they think.
And everybody always thinks Kardashian when you say that word.
Exactly.
That's the first thing.
100%. And so that's where my hate part of the relationship comes. And I think as we've all seen with the industry, especially with influencers, when influencers first started popping up, brands were like, here's money, here's tons of money.
Yeah.
Just
it was a sexy thing to do in our industry. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. As long as you post, then we're great. But I think that brands weren't challenging influencers enough in terms of making sure that they were getting data back. Was that effective? Was it not effective? And then being able to adjust. Instead, I think it became more of a checkbox to say, hey, we're doing this, rather than to truly identify what was the action that their followers then took. Because essentially influencer is just someone who has a voice into a community you want to tap into, which is not new to marketing. I mean, that's what we've been doing in marketing for years, is trying to identify. Michael
Jordan and Nike.
Exactly. You got to identify the people that have a voice in your community. But now with the rise of influencers, there's more opportunities for these micro moments where you can tap into smaller bases. And I think that's something that's been really important for me just in digital marketing. Instead of focusing so much on followers, you got to look at engagement. And I think it's the same thing with influencers. You got to identify the ones that truly have an authentic voice into the community you want to speak to. Yeah. But also I think brands should start focusing more on, instead of doing like paying for one-off posts, they need to build an organic relationship with these influencers over time, instead of just the kind of like, hey, can you post this when you can? And then what's been crazy, and I'm sure you probably have thoughts on this too, but especially after the Fire Festival, I mean, I think even more people are like, oh my gosh, influencer marketing, that's crazy. Like my brother who works in finance doesn't know much about influencer marketing, but after he saw that was like, man, influencers, I can't believe they can do that. And I was like, oh man, where do I start?
It's so funny you say that. Yeah. I just got off a call this last week. I won't mention the brand. Big brand CEO saw the Fire Festival and he a documentary, and told his team like, that's interesting. Let's do something like that for our brand. So it's like, swear to God. But I think and I've said it on the show before, like Billy is a psychopath, but the campaign with enough money behind it, if you can get Bella, you can get Gigi, you can get, Kendall, whatever. It was a brilliant marketing campaign.
Agreed.
But they couldn't fulfill the overall thing. But yeah, it's funny. It's definitely, I think, opened the eyes to a lot of people not in our industry. Like, wait a second, you can create a grass movement from social? And
it also reminds me of, and maybe this is our version of it now, is the viral moment. After viral videos became a thing, it was all of a sudden like, you'd be in marketing meetings.
How do we go viral?
Like, yes. Yes. And so I think this is our version of that now. Let's get some influencers, so.
Yeah, those are tough questions. Why aren't we going viral? Can we go viral this year?
Yeah.
What are your, I'm just interested in your thoughts on like Chance the Rapper, because he's done it a different way, right? Like with SoundCloud and kind of releasing music to the public. And I think he's really good in terms of what he wants to accomplish outside of music as well. But do you see more artists doing that? Do you think that's super unique? Like where do you fall on that?
Yeah, first of all, I love Chance. And I think that going back to what I was saying about where I feel the music industry is now, I think for the past, 10 years, it was originally like, oh my gosh, ever since I've been in the industry, the music industry is changing. It's not what it was. But I think Chance is a prime example of why it's so exciting in the music industry right now, because of the fact that you can create your own blueprint, and there's a lot of opportunities for creators, for artists to find ways to get their music out. Before, you literally were an artist. You needed to have your CD and you needed to get it to someone at the label.
Yeah.
You know, and I think now what we're seeing is that artists are starting to create their own buzz, and then we're able to work with them as a label. And I think that relationship is kind of how it's cultivated now. Like, we're starting to see artists who are creating their own stories, and then they're able to kind of transition into the label world.
I think, to your point, it's funny because there's been so much talent probably birthed because of that. And maybe 50 years ago, there was a lot of talented people that never broke. However, there's also Bad Baby and these, speaking of influencers, that make these somewhat catchy like hooks, and then all of a sudden their streams are up on it, just like.
And I think that that's part of the meme culture. I mean, meme culture, especially in hip hop, is huge. It is huge. I mean, literally, there was a great article I read the other day about how memes actually impact streams. And so once you get a meme going that maybe has a clip from a song, and maybe it is a Bad Baby song, I mean, that song, the streams will go up because you have kids that are like watching and sharing these memes, creating their own memes with the song, and then all of a sudden that's just part of the culture now. So it's to your point, it does allow for those types of artists and songs to kind of become get into the mainstream, but at the same time, it's really interesting to see how, fans take to that and how it evolves and the content they create from it.
This is super random, but watching, unfortunately, the Surviving R. Kelly documentary, people were outraged that his stream numbers went up. And I thought that was a pretty simple reason because of that. Like, everybody went back and listened to his music to understand the lyrics based on what was being said in the documentary. But there was a lot of news, and probably because they were too far away from the documentary or the industry, but they were outraged. Like, he's getting more popular. Like, no, I don't think he's getting more popular. People went back and looked at the tape, if you will.
I agree. And I think that, of course, on one side, it's like you're essentially supporting someone that, we don't feel like we want to support anymore. But at the same time, to your point, I think it was people going back to try to be like, what did I miss? Or what were those things? Yeah,
100%. All right. So I want to get into Be Digable, if I'm saying that correctly. But
Be Digable.
Be Digable. Okay, I totally butchered it. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
But I know that it's really big for you and kind of women empowerment, but also like the idea of personal brand.
Yes.
And you say that everybody has a personal brand, whether you like it or not.
Yep.
I'd love to just get your thoughts on why you're so passionate about that and why you're out to help people with that.
Yeah, definitely. So honestly, I think it does go back to when I first started in digital and social, when I got that role at Universal and social. And I was so like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, how am I going to keep up on everything? Like, and also
FOMO.
Yeah. And it's nuts when you think back, and sometimes it hits me and I'm like, gosh, we're in just such a different world now. But the fact that we're all so comfortable with sharing stuff for the most part, right? Like, we at least have that mindset. Even if you're not someone who shares all the time, you at least have the mindset of like an Instagram post or how people approach that. 10 years ago, we did not have that thought process. So for me I remember being so nervous about going on Twitter and being like, oh my gosh, I love boy bands. Are people going to be weird if I talk about them? You get self-conscious.
Yeah.
And so I remember just kind of making a decision. I love music. I love going to concerts, and I, obviously love digital. So those are the things I'm going to talk about. And I became more and more comfortable on Twitter. I really felt like I found my voice. I know it sounds really cheesy, but being able to know that you're putting that out there and whatever people respond. And I remember being so humbled when it was like a year or two later, Billboard did this list of people to follow on Twitter in the music industry, and they had added me to it. And I was like, what? Because usually those lists, like, you have to be pitched for it, or,
well, didn't you say you met your boss at the Grammys through Twitter? So you've experienced the power of having a voice and a personal brand.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think going back to your point too about influencers, I think people, when they think about how they can elevate their personal brand online, they're thinking, well, I'm not an influencer and I don't want to come across as showing off or cheesy or anything like that. And so really my passion grew out of the fact that obviously female empowerment, and I think especially for females, it's it does not feel like natural to be talking about what you're doing online. And so I really do have a passion, which is why I started this on the side, was to help female executives build their personal brands, because I think that there's so many incredible female leaders out there, and trying to help them tell their story in a more cohesive way so they can be identified as the thought leaders they are, not just within their circles, but to be able to kind of grow their presence online to be seen as that.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I think like even you and I are influencers in a small way. Maybe it's only to 75 people, like
Right.
in our smaller network, but anybody that's posting essentially has some type of influence.
Right.
And you have to take it serious. I like this stat on your website too. 82% of consumers are more likely to trust a company whose CEO and leadership team engage on social media. I don't think enough people understand that. I am searching for Lindsay Williams, and I find your Twitter, I find your Instagram, I find your LinkedIn, and I see if you're credible or not.
Yes, exactly. Every company, or especially like at my last job and before that, when you see that there's a CEO, a CMO, or the executive teams are on social and they're active and they're engaged, it only adds more to the brand.
It's almost like Yelp when there's like photos of the food and the menu. And seriously, it's like, okay, this place is legit.
When you have, I mean, I think that for just any company in general, your biggest advocates are your employees.
Yeah.
And so if they're focused on intentionally raising their personal brand in an authentic way, and that's what I'm really passionate about, is there's a lot of people who are able to do it in a way that maybe doesn't exactly reflect who they are. Maybe they're able to pretend that they're doing more than they're doing and things like that. So that's why I'm really focused on female executives and female professionals that want to authentically share who they are, but also find ways to create more opportunities for themselves. Because I think right now, everybody is craving authenticity, and they're craving a community. So again, going back to what you were mentioning, when you see an executive that's on the platform and you're like, oh man, I love what they're doing, or they're engaging, or I love how they were able to comment on something that happened with the brand, and wow, I have more respect because they did that. I think there's a lot of opportunities there, but I think there's still a lot of hesitation when it comes to that, because then you also have to be transparent sometimes.
Yeah. I think to your point about employees being your biggest advocates, I think Twitter's done a pretty good job of this. I'm sure you've seen it. Hashtag work where you love, or whatever it is. But like, it almost feels like they're paying their employees just because they're so positive about the environment. And that's to your point, that helps with recruitment. That helps with people kind of with the brand and things like that. And and I've had people say that too. Like, it seems like you guys have fun at STN, just by following our Instagram and seeing a hike or a team building or what have you. It's
absolutely.
You don't think about it, but people are noticing that stuff.
Oh, for sure.
I would love to get your thoughts. So if you sat down with a female CEO and they're like, Lindsay, like, I feel awkward, like I don't want to do this social media thing, but I hear you, I know it's important. What's kind of that foundation that you say, listen, I get it, it's kind of out of the norm for you, but you have to start doing X immediately?
Yes. I think the biggest thing is, because that's literally the number one thing I get is clients are like, but it doesn't feel right. I don't know how to do it. Yeah. They're just like, I don't know. There's a way to create, and again, it goes back to the fact that when they think influencer, they think Kim Kardashian. I'm not asking you to be posting like Kim. Exactly. It all comes back full circle. Yeah. I'm not asking you to be posting about Kim Kardashian, and I'm not asking you to share your deepest, darkest secrets. I think that there's a way to create a brand that you will feel comfortable with. So, but it also goes back to like what the goals are. And I think I help female executives create like 3 brand pillars to really hone in on it. Because I think sometimes it's like, well, I love this and I do this and I focus on this and I want to talk about this. And it really is just finding a way to hone in on those key messages that you want to make sure people understand is what your focus is on. Whether it's I'm in the food or restaurant business, or I'm really an advocate for helping dog rescues, whatever it is. It's being able to hone in on what those key things are, and then making sure that there's a consistent conversation that you're engaging around in those. So that's the biggest thing. Is I'm not asking you to post selfies every day, but let's identify what the goals are. And then with those goals, these are the things that you should be doing to make sure that you're engaged in that space.
Yeah, it's funny you say it, because even for me, like I have a background in radio, so this environment feels more comfortable for me, and I like to learn, and it's kind of a selfish endeavor. I want to like, geek out over the industry and also learn from people like you, rather than doing a selfie like, all right guys, here's my top 3 tips of Facebook and how to like, that's just not me. I understand people that do it really well, but finding whatever your comfort level is
100%
is the key. Yeah.
And I think that's just the biggest thing, is that if people don't see it, as we know, representation is like so huge. So if like you just don't see other people doing it similarly, then you don't really have an idea or a concept. And so the thing that I'm most passionate about, outside of obviously wanting to help females raise their profiles in the business space, is helping people identify opportunities. And I think when I'm able to help them identify how they can, create opportunities for themselves in a way that is very natural, that it's not you pretending to be someone you're not, or, editing photos of you. That's where I think the sweet spot is.
Yeah, it's like a hustle only lasts so long. So if you're not naturally that selfie person giving advice, you might do it for a couple of weeks, but it's never gonna last, because it's not innately who you are type deal.
And what I always tell people too is, guaranteed, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, pick a random person that maybe you went to high school with or you went to college with. You kind of have an idea of who they are. Oh, that's the person who's like really negative, or that's the person, oh man, he always talks about, that he loves pizza. I don't know. That's a personal brand. I mean,
that's true.
I almost hate the word too. Personal brand's probably going to become my influencer word, but that's basically what it is. Whatever people think of you in terms of like how they associate you is what it is. And so I take clients through that a lot too, is what are you known for, but what do you want to be known for? And like, let's make actionable steps to get there.
I think this is kind of going off the rails a little bit, but even on if you think on the personal front, it's people are becoming their own brands. I'm amazed with these like photo shoots, these engagement and then wedding and then pregnancy photos, and like people are just like creating these narratives, and they're having these professional photo shoots of like every stage of their life. It's crazy.
And that's the thing too. It's like, I'm in this space and I really focus on the fact of my goals for it, because at the same time, it can get me really jaded and be like, oh gosh, what am I doing?
Like I'm personally confident in my personal brand, like in the business world, but like my personal brand is just like a dude on the weekends. That's where I feel super awkward to share all that. So,
no, for sure. I know. I'm sure we could do a whole entire other podcast just on personal branding in terms of that whole thing, because I think it is totally off the rails.
But it's funny that you're spearheading that movement, because I don't think enough people talk about it. And it's so important to have, even if you're shy or you don't want to be out there, like to have your profile set up and to have a space online where people, if they're doing 5 minutes of research on you, they can kind of understand who you are, that you're credible, that you're professional, etc.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so we're wrapping up here, but I want to get some rapid fire questions out here for you. First of all, I guess before we get into that, I like to ask this question, like, how do you approach marketing as a whole? Like, what's your core belief when you attack any marketing campaign?
I think any marketing campaign always comes down to the quality of the product. I think no matter what it is. I mean, obviously, if you're a great marketer, then, we're really, we pride ourselves on the fact that we can, position anyway. But I think that you just feel the difference when it's a quality product, but also having a really clear vision of what the goals are. I think sometimes we take the same approach across with anything that we're marketing, but I think that when you have a very clear vision of we're here, we're trying to get here, then it's almost like super easy to then identify like what are the key touchstones that we need to do, what are the things, what's the narrative we need to shift, where do we need to be, and I think too often, kind of starting something without having a clear vision, you're going to lose already, I think.
Yeah. All right. So some rapid fire questions for you. What is the one social or marketing tool that you could not live without?
Oh man. Does this include platforms or tool? Tool.
I think tool.
Okay. So my new favorite is Planoly.
I never heard of it.
So Planoly for basically Instagram, and now you can schedule stories. It doesn't go live, but I recently started using it.
Is it plan.ly?
It's Planoly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a new one that I've been starting to use a lot more. So you can like look at your Instagram feed, so you can kind of like map it out before it goes live. You can schedule it, because obviously it took a while for
the
us
API,
to be,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the most recent one.
So you can upload Instagram stories to that platform.
You can
as
now
well?
upload Instagram stories, and then they just released some new templates for you to be able to like easily create Instagram stories too.
Nice. There you go. I always ask this question, even though I know the answer to it, but from a business perspective at Capital, what's the social platform that seems to be working the most right now?
Instagram. Yeah. I mean, that's everyone's focus.
Well, and that, I guess from like an artist standpoint too, I would love for you to rank order of importance, because this has changed a lot over the last year and a half, especially with Snapchat, I think, kind of falling down. But Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, where do you kind of rank that in terms of where you guys are spending the most time at with the artists?
Yeah, I mean, I think YouTube, I would even put it above Instagram, just because that's just for us visual content. And then I would say Instagram, Twitter, because of the fact that when you know, obviously we know the power of Twitter still, you have your voice there, you can comment on things and be able to build those moments. And then I would say Facebook under that. So YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and then probably, even though Facebook like ads is where Facebook, you know, works the most for us. So, but yeah, I think those would probably be generally, and then we still tap into Snapchat is still really important as well.
What about Musically, or not Musically?
Oh,
it's
yes,
TikTok
and
now.
TikTok is huge. TikTok, it's funny, Musically was starting to transition more into like, okay, cool, like we kind of rode that train, but as soon as like TikTok has now bought it, like it's been incredible to see the growth that it's taken. So it's definitely another real priority platform for us as well.
So for you just a quick question for you on, if there's not an official music video for a single that's come out, are you guys running official pages on YouTube for every artist, and are you uploading like the lyric version as soon as you can? Like, I know
that's a really great question.
That's super granular, but I kind of
that's actually our best practice is we try to create when we're launching a single, we like to create, you know, moments for the song, so not just put everything all at once. So finding the best way. So when we release a song, we usually have a video that goes up that maybe it might just be the album artwork, or some kind of visualizer, or a lyric video that's still an engaging piece of content that will also make sure to like kick up the algorithm on the YouTube page itself. And then maybe 2 weeks later, we go with the video, maybe a week or two after that, we do a live performance. So that's kind of like how we approach releasing the video content.
Awesome. You mentioned FOMO earlier, so that's a major thing with the industry moving so fast. How do you stay on top of everything that changes and make sure you don't miss out?
You know, it's funny, when I was younger, it definitely would overwhelm me because I was like, oh gosh, I can't not be on it. But I think that once you identify like the key communities and thought leaders and people you follow, you start identifying the themes that bubble up. And then it also becomes like an instinct based on your industry and what you feel should be the next. So I try not to get overwhelmed with, I don't have to be the first person to know everything, because I also feel that if you're the first to a platform and there's no one there, it's not going to be effective. So
let somebody else A/B test it for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm very good with that, very comfortable with that, which is nice.
One of the last questions for you would just be any advice for anybody striving to work in the music industry and become somewhere like senior level like you?
I would say, because of the fact that it's so exciting in music right now, is to continue to bring like new and fresh ideas. Because I think a lot of executives really do look at interns and the younger people that coming into the industry for ideas. And it's been incredible to see how innovation happens, you know, from within. And so I think for someone who's young, like, be hungry, do the work. I mean, every single person that I look at that I've been in the industry with for 10 years, they were all the ones as interns who no task was above them. You know, they were grinding to build the reputation and to build the trust of people, but then also not being afraid to build those relationships and share your ideas, because I think it's so important right now to like have those new and fresh ideas.
The CAA model of working in the mailroom first and working your way up, I mean, that's like a
classic.
That's a classic thing, but that I mean, that happens in every single industry and every single company. If you're willing to kind of grind it out in the beginning, you'll reap the fruits of your labor in the future. Well, cool. My last question is, if you can recommend anybody in your network that can be the next guest on this show to provide some value, anybody that comes to mind in your circle.
Man, I would say Um, one of my dear friends, but who's also doing something really, really cool right now is Alyssa Talavic Garcia over at Facebook. She was just brought on, I think, at the past year. Now that they're making deals now with the music industry.
Nice. Very cool.
And so, yeah, so it's been very, very interesting to see how that's been rolling out.
All right, I might have to ask you for an intro there.
Definitely.
Interesting conversation. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much. This is super awesome and dropping that knowledge.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yes, and I apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning.
No, yeah, that's probably on our end. And then I'm usually in LA like once a week, so we have to finally get together.
Oh my gosh, yeah, definitely let me know.
Cool. Thanks so much, Lindsay. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good one.
Adios. Bye.
Bye.
So there it is, Lindsay Williams. That was a good one. I'm glad she was just as excited about IGTV as I am. I know it seems like a small. Again, I said it earlier, but the fact that Instagram finally, what I call caved, but they realized that IGTV was just an amazing platform update, or just an amazing ability to do more on Instagram rather than a separate app. I think IGTV will take off now. I mean, I'm seeing it all across my feed where people are now posting videos longer than a minute. You're not limited by that 60 seconds anymore, and you can really grab someone's attention for long-form content. If you can grab it in the first 60 seconds, people are going to click and view more and watch more type deals. So she's as excited as I am, I think, in the music industry as well. Like we talked about, behind the scenes, day in the lives, music videos, potentially in the award show space. We're talking about, those 3-minute acceptance speeches. Like, all those stuff is fair game now, especially when you want to engage on the most organic engagement platform, which is Instagram. But overall, really good stuff. A few things that stuck out to me was her thoughts on influencers. I think a lot of times people don't want to be sold to. They want to be, it needs to be a lot more organic. So her philosophy on let's create this partnership with influencers and have more of a back and forth relationship rather than let's just use this influencer for once and then never use them again. I think, audiences are smart. They're going to understand that Capitol Records just paid this person one time and then went away. But if you develop a relationship, just like in any other walk of life, it comes off across even more organic. And I think the fan base is more likely to engage with whatever, the marketing campaign may be. I also think, as you guys probably could tell, I'm just really interested in the Spotify and the streaming space and how that's changing not only the music industry, but the revenue model. Like 95% of their, revenue, if you talk about 20, 25 years ago, was records and CD sales at, actual record stores. And now we're talking about shifting that entire revenue stream model to the streaming space and to Apple Music and things like that. And also really YouTube was something, and Vivo was something that originally they hated probably. And now they're starting to say, okay, this is the way of the future. Let's find a way to work with YouTube, find a way to work with Vivo, and find a way to make that a revenue stream as well. And then she's doing some really cool things on the personal brand front. You guys can look up Lindsay on Twitter, on LinkedIn. She has a website, Digable, as well. But just the personal brand, how important it is for everybody listening right now to have some type of personal brand when people are looking you up on Google. The number one thing that pops up is probably your Twitter, your Instagram, your LinkedIn. So just important to have those platforms, doing good things for you and kind of speaking to the industry as a whole that you're in. And Lindsay is a great case study for it. She literally got the job at the Grammys because she started posting about music and was really a thought leader in a sense in the space. So really, really good stuff from Lindsay Williams. I really appreciate it. As always, I want to thank Auntie Lightning, Will Kelly. I think Lauren was helpful as well in this podcast, fellas, right? And everybody that helps us with the show. Every single episode, Business of Social, breaking it down for you, episode 29. We will see you next time, and make sure to go on iTunes, rate us 5 stars if you enjoy the content. If we're dropping knowledge for you, we really, really appreciate it. See you next time.